Williamsville, New York, 1981. It looked like the American dream on steroids. Clean sidewalks, polished cars, two-story homes with four-pillar porches and green-ass lawns so perfect they look fake. Doctors, lawyers, football players, all living like kings. On the surface, we were one of them. The Goggins family. Rolls Royce in the garage, Mercedes and a shiny new Corvette in the driveway. My mom was stunning. My brother and I were always clean and dressed like we belonged. My dad wore tailored suits like armor, smiled like a weapon. Into the outside world, we were living the dream. But that dream was a fucking lie. It was a mask over hell. Because the truth was, every time that front door closed, we weren't a family. We were a battlefield. My father wasn't some hardworking businessman. He was a dictator, a monster, a smiling devil in a silk suit who turned every inch of our so-called paradise into a prison. We didn't sleep normal hours. While the rest of the kids in the neighborhood were in bed, I was at Skateland, my father's roller rink in East Buffalo, busting my ass to keep his empire running. 6 years old and already working nights, not pretend helping. I mean real shit. Cleaning skates, organizing shelves, breathing in toxic spray that made my eyes burn and my nose sting. My brother ran the food counter. My mom cooked dinner on 2 electric burners set up on the floor of the back office like we were camping in a war zone. While the music thumped and the lights flashed for the customers, we were grinding, always grinding. Not for money, not for a future, just to avoid getting our asses beat. My father didn't pay us. He didn't even pretend to. The money was his, every single dollar. My mom didn't have a credit card or a bank account. She couldn't leave even if she wanted to. He made damn sure of that. We didn't exist without him, and he reminded us of it every damn day. If the register came up short, she got punished. If a pair of skates went missing, I got punished. Everything was punishment. Everything was fear. And yet, every morning at 7 a.m., we lined up in the driveway like a fucking parade float. My dad dressed sharp like he was heading to Wall Street. My mom composed and beautiful. My brother and I with clean shirts and backpacks, pretending we weren't bleeding inside. We'd smile, wave, and play the part while our neighbors nodded and drove away in their luxury cars. They didn't know we'd just come home from a 12-hour shift. They didn't know my dad was passed out upstairs while we went off to school sleep-deprived and shell-shocked. And if they did know, they didn't give a shit. That's the thing about a polished neighborhood. Nobody wants to scratch the surface. At school, I couldn't keep my eyes open. Teachers thought I was lazy, but the truth was I'd been up all night working for a man who didn't give a fuck if I lived or died. Recess was a game of survival. I couldn't let my sleeve slip. Couldn't wear shorts. Couldn't let anyone see the bruises. Because showing them meant getting more. Showing them meant exposure. And exposure in my world meant punishment. Skateland wasn't just a business. It was my father's kingdom. And he ran it with iron fists and cold eyes. Upstairs was the Vermilion Room, a bar where the adults partied. The celebrities came through: Rick James, O.J. Simpson, Teddy Pendergrass. You'd think that shit would impress a kid, but not when you're scrubbing blood out of the bathroom at 1 a.m. and cleaning up used tampons out of toilets while weed smoke chokes the air. I didn't care about fame. I cared about not fucking up. Because fucking up meant pain, the worst night of my life. And there were a lot of candidates. It started like most. My mom caught my dad flirting with one of his hookers at the bar. She drank 2 shots to stay quiet. We drove home in silence, like always. But that night when we walked in, he was waiting. This belt came all the way from Texas just to whip you, he told her. And then he did. He whipped her hard, buckle first, dragged her by her hair through the house while my brother and I watched. I couldn't take it anymore. Something snapped in me. I ran at him and jumped on his back, screaming, punching, clawing at his eyes. Don't hit my mom, I yelled over and over again. I was a kid, but I was done being scared. I was filled with rage. Real rage. He tossed me to the ground, smiled, and said, "You're raising a gangster." Then he turned the belt on me. I curled up, took the hits. My mom crawled to the front door and hit the panic button. When the alarm screamed, he paused, looked around like he was weighing his next move, then walked upstairs like nothing happened. The cops came. You'd think that meant safety. You'd be wrong. My dad opened the door with a smile. "Just a little domestic misunderstanding," he said. "Look around. Does this look like I mistreat my wife?" They glanced over his shoulder, saw my mom with a busted lip and dried blood on her temple, and did nothing. They laughed, fucking laughed. Because in 1981, a rich man with a smile was more believable than a bloody woman begging for help. That night burned something into me. Not fear, hatred, pure focused hatred, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that gives you power. I stopped caring if I lived or died. I'd rather die than keep living in that house afraid. But it didn't stop there. That was just the warm-up. Because the beatings didn't stop. The lies didn't stop. The hell didn't stop. Day after day, night after night, it kept going. My brother and I turned on each other sometimes, throwing punches just to release the pressure. And we fought like animals, because that's what we were turning into. Caged animals, broken kids. I used to wet the bed almost every night. Not because I was weak, because my body was on edge 24/7. That's what trauma does to a kid. It fucks with your brain, your gut, your nerves. And the worst part, you think it's normal? You think that's just life. But even in the darkness, there were sparks. My mom signed me up for Cub Scouts one day. I put on that navy blue uniform and stood tall. For a second, I felt normal. I felt proud. She smiled. I smiled back. Then my dad walked in. "Where you two going?" He asked. "First Cub Scout meeting," she said. He laughed. An hour later, we were at a racetrack watching horses. My uniform didn't belong there. I didn't belong there. But he didn't give a shit. He lost thousands that day, screamed at the sky, and spit out the window the whole drive home. His spit kept landing on my face in the back seat. Every drop felt like acid. That was my life. And that was just the beginning. Man, Skateland wasn't just a roller rink. It was a damn factory of pain, a kingdom built by fear, controlled by one man, my father. Tris Goggins didn't just own the place. He ruled it. And my brother, my mom, and I were the loyal, unpaid servants who kept the whole thing spinning while he barked orders from above like he was some kind of fucked up king. The floor stretched damn near a whole city block. The walls were painted blood red. The mirror ball spun like a hypnotist pendulum. On the surface, it looked like magic. People rolled in for good times and funk music. Families came in smiling, ready to forget their lives for a few hours. They had no clue that the entire operation was powered by a scared, broken family held together by nothing but obligation and pure survival instinct. My job was the skates. Dozens and dozens of pairs. I knew every size, every location on the shelves. I had to. If one was misplaced, if one went missing, if I forgot to clean one, my ass was on the line. I had a step stool just to see over the counter. I dragged it around like it was an extension of my body. Kids laughed when I climbed to grab skates for them, but I wasn't smiling. I wasn't a cute helper. I was a slave in a fucking prison. My brother worked the food station. Popcorn, hot dogs, pizzas, always moving, always sweating. My mom sat at the front, collecting money, faking smiles, counting the cash like her life depended on it. Because it fucking did. If that drawer came up light, there were consequences. My father didn't believe in mistakes. He believed in punishment. He didn't need proof to beat you. He just needed suspicion. Every night before opening, we prepped. The floors had to be swept and mopped until they shined like glass. The skates had to be deodorized and stacked perfectly. The kitchen had to be cleaned, stocked, and ready to serve. We didn't prep because we cared about the customers. We prepped because my father was watching. He watched everything. He moved through that building like a ghost with a grudge. One wrong move and he'd snap. At 7 p.m., the doors opened and the circus began. The funk blasted through the speakers. Rick James, George Clinton, Run DMC, disco lights spun. People laughed and danced and skated like it was heaven. But behind every beat, every fucking spin, we were grinding our knuckles into the bone just to keep it running. I was handing out skates with a fake grin, looking over my shoulder every few seconds, just in case he was watching, which he always was. He wasn't just watching us. He was watching the crowd, counting heads, estimating profits in real time. Every person through that door was a dollar sign. And if his count didn't match the register, somebody was getting lit the fuck up. There was no wiggle room, no explanation. It's belt to skin and pain. Upstairs was worse. That was his real domain. The Vermilion Room. A slick little bar packed with smoke and fake smiles. It wasn't just a bar. It was a meeting ground for Buffalo's underground elite. Politicians, bankers, celebrities. Everyone knew Tress. And he played the part. Poured free drinks for the rich guys, slapped backs, kissed asses. But it wasn't out of kindness. It was strategy. He gave away booze so they'd buy more. So they'd owe him. So he could call in favors. Loans, protection, silence, network. And at the center of it was his stable of women, prostitutes, girls he sent across the border into Canada to service bankers and execs. He ran a whole fucking side business out of that bar, using Skateland as his front. Sometimes he disappeared during the night, leave the DJ booth, and reappear with a new girl on his arm. One of them used to smile at my mom while she was fucking my dad on the same couch my brother and I slept on. No shame, no decency, just raw, uncut humiliation. And yet my mom stayed. Why? Because she had no choice, no money, no name on a bank account, no power. She was a prisoner too. All she had were 2 sons to protect and a body she tried to keep moving, even when her soul was damn near dead. When the bar shut down and the customers rolled out, the real work began. Cleaning, scraping gum and grime, and God knows what else off the floor. Emptying overflowing trash bins packed with used tampons and beer bottles. The place reeked of weed and sweat and piss. But we cleaned it. Every night. Because we had to. Because the idea of not doing it meant another punishment, another beating. Another reminder that we weren't free. There were nights he'd come home drunk, tossing cash and bags onto the kitchen table like trophies. 10,000 here, 20,000 there, and still we lived in fear. Still we walked on glass. Still my mom cooked dinner on a burner in the back of a roller rink like it was her last meal. One night I remember him pulling a gun from under the cushion I was sleeping on. A fucking pistol, tucked under the place where I laid my head every night. He took it out, looked me in the eye, smiled like the devil, and tucked it into his ankle holster. Then he walked upstairs with 2 brown paper bags filled with cash like it was just another Tuesday. That image never left me. That smile, that gun, that fucking cash. Sometimes we finish up dead tired and pile into the car as the sun was coming up. My mom would drive us home while my father passed out in the passenger seat. My brother and I would drag ourselves up the stairs, get maybe an hour or 2 of sleep, then start the whole process over again. School, then rink, then pain. And yet the neighborhood still believed in the illusion. They saw the cars, the clothes, the posture. They saw my dad in his suit and assumed we were fine. Better than fine. They didn't hear the screams. They didn't see the bruises. They didn't see an 8-year-old working nights, scrubbing floors, trying to stay invisible so he wouldn't get whipped. They didn't see the way we walked like ghosts through our own house, hoping not to draw attention. They saw a dream. We lived in a nightmare. The thing is, when you grow up in hell long enough, you start to think it's normal. You start to believe it's what you deserve. Yeah, this is just how it is. Yeah, all fathers are like that. That every night should end in silence and fear. But even then, something inside me knew different. I couldn't name it yet, but it was there. A fire, a voice, something whispering that this life, this system, this pain, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. He tried to beat the strength out of me. He tried to make me small. But every hit, every insult, every fucking long night on the rink floor, he was sharpening a weapon. And that weapon was me. Man, you can only take so much before the dam breaks. My mother knew it. We all knew it. And even though she had spent years trapped in his empire, cooking on the floor, bleeding in silence, working like a mule for a man who didn't give a fuck about anything but money and control, she still had one thing left, instinct. Somewhere under the scars and fear, she had the guts to plan something most women in her shoes wouldn't have dared. But escaping the devil doesn't happen overnight. It takes deception, patience, and a willingness to lose everything. My father thought he was untouchable. He thought the chains he wrapped around us were permanent, that the fear he beat into us would always hold, that my mom would never have the strength to fight back. But she started planning in silence. She played her role, smiled when she had to, stroked his ego. She made him think she was his again. It was all fake, but it worked. When she asked him to co-sign on a credit card application, he agreed. That little piece of plastic changed everything. He had no idea he just signed his own eviction notice. She kept the card hidden like it was gold, because in a way it was. That card was her weapon. A way to buy gas, rent a room, get the fuck out. A way to reclaim her life, even if it meant walking through fire to do it. All she had to do was wait for the right time. The moment when she could move without being followed, without being dragged back by her hair. And then that moment came. One morning at the kitchen table, after years of being called a whore, a servant, a nobody, she stood up. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I'm leaving you." It's like that. No scream, no tears, just finality. She didn't ask, she declared it. I'll never forget the way his face dropped. Like someone finally punched the puppet master in the mouth. He tried to talk her down. Then he got ugly, told her she was nothing without him, that she'd be a prostitute in a year, that nobody would want her. Then he looked at me and my brother and told us we were going to grow up to be nothing, or a couple fuck ups. Don't come back, he said. I'll have another woman in here 5 minutes after you leave. I didn't say a word. I just got up, went upstairs, grabbed black trash bags and started packing. My brother followed slowly like he was stuck in a trance. He still wanted his dad to be someone worth following. That illusion hadn't shattered for him yet, but mine had. Mine shattered years ago when I was ready. I didn't need another second in that hellhole. We loaded up the Volvo, my mom's car, the only one he refused to drive, and strapped our bikes to the back. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back just once. He didn't move, just stood there, still smug, still convinced we'd be back. We didn't head toward the interstate like he expected. That was the trap he wanted us to fall into. Instead, my mom took a dirt construction road to Betty's house, an old friend who'd been helping her plan the escape. We parked in the garage and pulled the door shut just as he came flying down the street in his Corvette. Missed us by seconds. That night, we waited in the dark, quiet, holding our breath as the world shifted beneath us. When it was safe, we got back on the road. But it wasn't a clean getaway. The Volvo started burning oil like it was possessed. Black smoke pouring out the back, engine groaning, and my mom started to unravel. Years of pain, all bubbling up at once. She pulled into a gas station in the middle of nowhere, panicked, ready to turn back. I can't do this, she kept saying. I have to go back. Fuck that. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "We got to go, Mom." I was a kid, but I wasn't a child anymore. Not after what I'd seen. Not after what I'd lived through. I wasn't scared of running. I was scared of staying. She called Betty from the gas station payphone. Betty talked her down, told her there was a Volvo dealership in Erie, Pennsylvania. The attendant put in enough oil to limp us there, and we crashed for the night in a Holiday Inn. Fully booked, no rooms, but the manager took one look at us. Three exhausted souls carrying trash bags, and let us sleep in the conference room on rollaway beds. My mom stayed up all night watching the street, guarding our bikes, holding it together by a thread. The next day, the car was fixed. We got back on the road and drove straight through the night. 8 hours later, we pulled into Brazil, Indiana, my mom's hometown. We parked in front of my grandparents' house, and for the first time in my life, there was no screaming, no tension, no belt hanging from the doorknob. It's silence. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like a deep breath you didn't know you were holding finally being released. We stayed with my grandparents for 6 months. My mom got a job at a department store. I started taking college classes at Indiana State. Meanwhile, I enrolled in second grade. Again, I was behind, no doubt. Could barely read. But I had a teacher named Sister Catherine, and she didn't give a fuck about excuses. She was a short, no-nonsense nun with a gold tooth and a permanent scowl. Didn't smile. Didn't coddle. But she gave a shit. And that mattered more than anything. She didn't know my story, didn't need to. She just knew I was behind, and she put in the work. Gave me extra time. Drilled me on every lesson until it stuck. It wasn't kindness. It was accountability. It was structure. She didn't let me slide. And for the first time, I started catching up. In Buffalo, I pissed the bed every night. In Indiana, I didn't do it once. The fear was gone. The anxiety had lifted just enough for me to breathe. I still had demons, sure, but they were quieter. We had no money, barely enough food, lived in a $7 a month public housing apartment, but I felt like a king because we were free. My mom didn't have child support. Trish sent a few bucks every month just to stay out of court, but she didn't rely on him anymore. She hustled. She sacrificed. And when the food stamps weren't enough, we'd dump jars of loose change on the floor and count pennies to pay the bills. I'll never forget that night. Empty gas tank, nothing in the fridge. Lights about to get cut. And there we were counting change like it was treasure. We scraped together just enough for gas, food, and a couple burgers at Hardee's. It wasn't glamorous, it was gritty, but it was ours. And I'll take broke and free over rich and chained any day of the damn week. Man, freedom didn't mean shit was easy. Escaping hell didn't mean we were suddenly living in heaven. It just meant we had a new kind of struggle, a clean slate full of dirt. My mom had left everything behind. No job, no home, no money. And now she was living in a shoebox apartment in rural-ass Indiana, raising 2 kids on fumes, fighting to stay afloat. But even in that mess, we felt something we hadn't felt in years. Possibility. She busted her ass working at a department store during the day and took college classes at night. She was rebuilding from rubble, one scraped dollar at a time. And I was trying to figure out who the fuck I was without the daily beatdowns and trauma. I was 8 years old, repeating 2nd grade, the only black kid in a tiny Catholic school, and I could barely read, but at least now I had a shot. My teacher was Sister Catherine. She was mean as shit, but grumpy as hell, scowled like she wanted to slap the world. But you know what? I fucking loved her. She didn't smile, didn't baby me, didn't give me any special treatment, but she showed up. Every single day she put time into me. She drilled me, pushed me. She didn't let me hide behind my excuses, my trauma, or my learning gaps. I was just a kid who didn't know shit, and she made it her mission to fix that. And I worked. I showed up every day and tried. My mind was still foggy, still dragging all that bullshit from Buffalo, but I kept grinding. I kept sitting in that desk doing the work. And slowly I started to learn. I started to read. I started to believe that maybe I wasn't as stupid as I'd been told my whole fucking life. But nothing good lasts without a test. I made it through 2nd grade again. I was catching up. I even made a couple of friends. In came 3rd grade. And 3rd grade hit me like a damn freight train. Miss D was no Sister Catherine. She wasn't patient. She wasn't tough love. She was just cold, dismissive. She looked at me like I was a problem, like I didn't belong. From day one, she made it clear I wasn't one of the good kids. I wasn't normal. My test scores were garbage. I still struggled with reading and writing, and I couldn't keep up with shit. And instead of helping me, she wanted me gone. She told my mom I belonged in a different school, one for special students. We all know what that meant. Dumping ground for broken kids. It meant being labeled for life. It meant they'd given up on you. That was her answer to every struggle I had. Hey, get him out. My mom fought back, but the damage was done. My confidence, already fragile as hell, shattered all over again. And just like that, my mind turned on me. I started to stutter. I'm not talking about a little hesitation. I'm talking full on speech breakdown. My brain would jam and I just freeze, twitching through every sentence like a scratched up record. The more I got stuck, the more anxious I got. And the more anxious I got, the worse it became. Kids laughed, teachers got frustrated. I shut down, I stopped raising my hand. Stopped speaking in class. I couldn't risk that kind of exposure. Every word felt like a damn landmine mine. And every time I got called on, it was like standing naked in front of a firing squad. They brought in a psychologist. Group therapy, the shit show kind. 7 kids sitting in a circle, all labeled broken. One kid wore a helmet and smashed his head against the wall. Another pissed in the trash can like it was a urinal. The dude next to me had set his house on fire. I sat there thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? That office was next to a damn hospital. You want to talk about psychological warfare. Sit an already traumatized black kid in a circle of disturbed white kids in a room next to a damn R. That shit will mess with your head. I lasted 2 sessions. Came out looking like I'd seen a ghost. Told my mom I'm not going back. She didn't make me. They also tried to throw me on Ritalin. ADHD, said. Hyper, they said. I wasn't hyper. I was living in survival mode. My nervous system had been fried since I was fucking 5. When you live in constant fear, your brain learns to operate on alert. You don't focus, you scan, you dodge, you react. They didn't understand that. They just wanted to medicate it. I didn't take the Ritalin, but the fear of being labeled stuck, that label, slow, broken, special, it followed me like a shadow. I was the only black kid in the whole fucking school, and now I was also the dumbest. That combo will fuck you up real good. Miss D wasn't teaching. She was writing me off. I could feel it in every look, every impatient sigh. She didn't want to deal with me, didn't want to invest in figuring out how I learned. I wasn't worth her energy. I was just taking up space, so I found a workaround. I started cheating. I copied off the smart kids. I memorized answers. I found ways to game the system just enough to look like I was keeping up. Because if I didn't, they were going to ship me out, throw me into a box labeled unfixable, and call it a day. But that fake progress came with a cost. Every time I cheated, every time I skimmed by without learning, I buried the belief that I could actually get better. I reinforced the lie that I was too dumb to ever catch up. Yeah, I'd always be a fake, a fraud, a failure. So yeah, I looked like I was improving, but inside I was dying. That's what toxic stress does. It fucks you on every level. Mental, physical, emotional. My hair started falling out. I had white patches blooming across my skin. I was grinding my teeth in my sleep, waking up exhausted. My body was screaming, but no one heard it. Doctors didn't know what to do with me. Teachers gave up. And deep down, I started to believe what my father had said. And you ain't shit. You'll never be shit. I was 8 years old and already carrying that belief like a fucking tattoo on my brain. And I still kept going. Because somewhere in the chaos, I had decided one thing. I wasn't going to quit. I might have been broken, stuttering, scared, and behind, but I was still breathing. I was still showing up. I was still in the fight. And that's the thing no one counted on. Man, by the time I hit 9 years old, I didn't feel like a kid anymore. I felt like a used up old man in a small body. I'd seen too much, felt too much, been through more shit than most adults ever would. And even though we were out of Buffalo and far away from my father's fist, the damage didn't stop just because the beatings did. Pain doesn't give a fuck where you live. It follows you. It clings to your bones like mold on a damn wall. And when it sinks in deep enough, it changes everything. In your body, your brain, your belief in what's possible. I was stuck in this fog, living between two lives. The one where I had escaped, and the one where I still heard his voice. The beatings weren't daily anymore, but the echoes were. The shame, the fear, the voice in my head that said I was too slow, too stupid, too broken to ever become anything. That shit was on repeat every single day. But I wasn't quitting. Hell no. Quitting's a choice, and I'd already learned how to suffer. Now, I just had to learn how to survive while carrying all that suffering like a backpack full of bricks. My mom was doing everything she could. She worked at the department store, went to college classes, tried to keep food in the fridge and the lights on. But we were broke as fuck. Public housing, welfare, and government cheese. Sometimes we counted change just to make it through a single night. That's real poverty. Not the kind you see on some charity commercial. I'm talking real life. We got nothing but jars of pennies and hope kind of broke. She missed my brother bad. He'd gone back to Buffalo to live with my dad. I never understood it. To me, that man was the devil, but my brother saw him differently. Maybe because he was older, or maybe because he still wanted his approval. Either way, he chose to go back into that fire, and it crushed my mom. But she didn't let it break her. She kept grinding. Every hour she was awake, she was working, hustling, burning herself down just to build us up. We lived off food stamps and a few dollars my dad mailed once a month, just enough to dodge the courts. $25 every few weeks. That was it. That was the extent of his fatherhood. The man who used to make tens of thousands a night was now tossing us scraps while we figured out how to survive on canned beans and frozen bread. The state cut off our food assistance when they found out she had a car. A car, that was the line for them. Not the abuse, not the poverty, not the trauma, the car. If she sold it, they'd help. But how the fuck were we supposed to get around in a town with no buses, no cabs, nothing but long stretches of road and cold air? Without that car, she couldn't get to class. I couldn't get to school. We'd be screwed. So she found a loophole, signed up for a program called Aid to Dependent Children. She had the checks sent to my grandmother who signed them over to her. It was just enough to keep the lights on and buy groceries. Barely, but she made it stretch. That woman turned survival into a damn art form. Still, it wasn't enough. I remember one night we got home with nothing in the fridge, an empty gas tank, and no idea how we were going to eat. Then I remembered the jars of change we'd been collecting for years. Pennies, nickels, dimes, the shit most people ignore on the sidewalk. But that night it saved our ass. We dumped the jars out on the floor and counted every coin. It's just enough to pay the electric bill, fill up the car, and buy some groceries. Even had a couple bucks left over for burgers. That was a win. A victory built from scraps. That's the thing people don't understand. Hard times don't just test you. They teach you. They teach you how to hustle, how to adapt, how to fucking survive. They show you who you are when shit's not cute, when the lights are off and no one's watching. Most people fold under that kind of pressure. They panic. But we didn't fold, we adapted. We got smarter. We learned how to stretch every dollar and every breath. My mom was becoming something new. She was still carrying her pain, still haunted by what she'd been through, but now she was turning that pain into fuel. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was evolving. She was putting her life back together, one textbook, one shift, 1 hour of sleep at a time. We're watching her do that, watching her refuse to be defeated. It gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. A reason to believe in my own fight. But the demons weren't gone. They were just waiting. And when they came back hard. I started third grade thinking I was on the upswing. I was catching up. I was showing progress. But then the walls closed in again. Miss D was still there, still ready to write me off. She didn't give a fuck how hard I was trying. All she saw was a black kid who stuttered, who struggled, who didn't fit. My standardized test scores came back in the gutter. I couldn't build on lessons, couldn't remember shit from the day before. And instead of digging in and helping, she wanted me gone again. Special education, group therapy, the trash pile. I was a damn ghost in that classroom. The only black kid, the only poor kid, the only one being told he didn't belong. Every word I said got stuck in my throat. Every sentence twisted into a stammer. Every time I raised my hand, I felt like I was exposing my wounds to a firing squad. So I stopped. I went silent. Not out of laziness, out of survival. I didn't trust anyone at that point. Not teachers, not therapists, not systems. All I trusted was pain. Pain was consistent. Pain was truth. Pain didn't lie. And I'd already learned how to live with pain. It was the one thing I was better at than everyone else in that building. So when school became unbearable, when my anxiety spiked so hard I couldn't breathe, when my body started breaking down from the stress, I didn't complain. I didn't whine. I just kept walking into that building every day like I was going to war. That's what I signed up for. The suffering contract. I knew no one was coming to save me. I knew no one gave a shit about how hard it was. So I stopped expecting relief. I stopped waiting for fairness. I started owning my suffering. I didn't ask for a lighter load. I trained for stronger shoulders. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was trying to survive. And then eventually I was trying to grow. And that shift, made that decision to use suffering as fuel instead of letting it kill me, that was the beginning of everything. Man, by the time I hit 4th grade, I already knew the story people had written for me. I was the black kid in the poor part of town. I was the stuttering slow one, the dumb one, the one who belonged in the corner, out of sight. The system saw me as broken. Teachers looked through me like I wasn't worth the fucking oxygen I was breathing. The town we lived in wasn't just small. It was small-minded. And in their world, a kid like me wasn't going anywhere but jail or the grave. I started hearing it in whispers, started seeing it in looks, kids talking under their breath, parents clutching their kids a little tighter when I walked by. I could feel it in the hallways and stores, on the playground. The racism wasn't always loud, but it was there. It bled through everything like smoke in a room. You can't always see it, but it chokes the fuck out of you anyway. I was already on the edge, already carrying a full rucksack of pain. That shit just added weight. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. I was so fucking stressed out that my hair started falling out in patches. My skin broke out in white splotches. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I didn't know if I was sick or just coming apart. Every morning I woke up already in a battle with myself. Every night I laid in bed, wondering how long I could keep this shit going before I snapped. And still I showed up. I kept dragging myself to school. Kept trying to read, to write, to be invisible, because being seen meant being targeted, being called out, being called stupid. Every day I showed up was another round in the ring. And no one was throwing me a damn towel. It got so bad I couldn't even speak right anymore. That stutter had its claws in me. It owned me. It wrapped around my throat like a noose and made every sentence a war. I could barely say my own name without twitching. I remember staring at the floor, shaking, teeth grinding, trying to force words out. And when I couldn't, I'd feel eyes on me, judging, laughing, pitying. That's when I made a decision. If I couldn't be smart, I'd be silent. If I couldn't talk without fucking up, I wouldn't talk at all. I went into full shutdown mode. I turned into a mute. I was done embarrassing myself. I figured if I could stay quiet enough, I might get through the day without another scar. But even silence didn't protect me. I was still different, still marked, still alone. The school brought in a speech therapist, more labels, more sessions, more evidence that I was a fuck up. They even tossed in a shrink, some dude who sat in a circle with me and 6 other kids who couldn't even function in public. And one kid wore a helmet, one pissed in the trash can, one set his house on fire. That's who they put me with. That's who they thought I was. I remember sitting there thinking these people don't know shit about me. Because the truth was I wasn't broken. I was overloaded. You grow up with beatings, guns under your pillow, blood on the floor, working 12-hour nights at age 6, and then get told you're dumb because you can't recite your multiplication tables. But fuck that. That's not stupid. That's survival. I wasn't slow. I was traumatized. And nobody gave a fuck about that. And not the teachers, not the counselors, not the test. The system doesn't care why you're fucked up. It just stamps you and moves on. So I fought back the only way I could. I started cheating. I copied off my classmates, memorized answer keys. I did whatever it took to keep myself from getting tossed into the special ed dungeon. And it worked. On paper, I was improving, but inside I was crumbling. I was living a lie, a silent, scared, dishonest lie. And every time I got a good grade that I didn't earn, I hated myself a little more because I knew it wasn't real. I wasn't getting smarter. I was getting better at pretending, get better at wearing the mask. But even that couldn't save me from what was coming. The town I lived in wasn't built for kids like me. There were no role models, no mentors, no you can make it speeches. The only message I ever got was you were born to fail. It was like opening a fortune cookie every morning and getting the same message. You ain't shit. You'll never be shit. And for a while, I started to believe it. When you're that young and the whole world tells you you're worthless, you don't push back. You absorb it. You let it sink in until it becomes your truth. That's how the poison works. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It gets in your blood and rewrites your identity. And that's exactly what was happening to me. I stopped trying to be anything. I stopped dreaming. I stopped thinking about the future. I was just surviving one day at a time, hoping I wouldn't get called on, hoping no one would ask me to read out loud, hoping I wouldn't fuck up again. That's not living. That's waiting to die. But here's the fucked up part. There was still a spark in me. Buried under all the fear and shame and failure, there was a tiny piece of me that wasn't dead. A tiny part of me that still gave a shit. That still wanted to be more. That still believed that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't doomed to become another statistic. That part was quiet, but it was fierce. It was the part that remembered what it felt like to jump on my dad's back to protect my mom. The part that refused to cry during beatings. The part that still had hate in his heart and fire in his gut. The part that wanted to prove the whole fucking world wrong. That was the part of me that would become unstoppable. But first, I had to go through more hell. Because before you ever become the strongest version of yourself, you get torn down to nothing. And I wasn't done breaking yet. Man, everything in my life told me I was nothing. The beatings, the stares, the labels, the silence, the poverty, the fucking system. It all stacked up against me like a wall, like a towering fuck you from the universe. My father said I'd be a failure. My teachers treated me like I already was. The town saw me as a problem. Nobody believed I could be anything more than another black kid lost in the margins. And for a long time, I didn't either. But there comes a moment, just one, when everything starts to shift. Not because your life suddenly gets easier, not because people start treating you better, but because you make a decision to stop accepting their bullshit and start owning your truth. That moment for me came in the silence. Sitting alone, stuttering, failing, feeling broken. I could have folded. Could have stayed that quiet, invisible version of myself. But something deep down, some primal, angry, hungry voice was done taking hits. It was time to hit back. And the first swing was this. I wrote my own damn script. I didn't do it with a pen. I did it with grit and with pain, with hate, with the fire that had been building since the first belt landed on my back. I was tired of being a fucking victim. I was tired of being told who I was. If I was going to fail, I was going to do it on my own terms. If I was going to suffer, I was going to choose it, control it, weaponize it. So I started doing the hardest thing imaginable. I faced the truth. I took inventory of my life. Every ugly ass piece of it. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't run from it. I fucking owned it. I was molested, beaten, dehumanized, treated like shit, laughed at, ignored, tossed into a classroom full of headbangers and trash can pissers, labeled defective by people who never lived a second in my skin. I laid it all out like a forensic report on my own suffering. And instead of feeling sorry for myself, I made a decision. I'm going to use this shit. Every scar, every insult, every failure. I'm going to build a fire so hot it'll melt steel. And then I'm going to throw myself into it until I come out a different fucking animal. That's the difference between people who stay down and people who rise. Most people look at pain and they flinch. They avoid it. They numb it. They pretend it didn't happen. I stared at mine like it owed me money, like it had a debt to pay. I didn't want revenge on the world. I wanted to evolve. That's when I discovered the most powerful tool in my life, the accountability mirror. I looked in that motherfucker every day and told myself the truth. Not what I wished was true. Not some Hallmark bullshit. The hard, brutal, ugly truth. You're dumb Goggins. You can't read for shit. You're fat. You're scared. You're a liar. Every day I looked at that mirror and faced the reality I've been hiding from. And instead of hating it, I used it. The mirror didn't judge me. It gave me a blueprint. I wrote goals on Post-it notes and stuck them around the frame like targets. Shit I needed to fix. Shit I needed to kill. And one by one I attacked. Not with motivation. Fuck motivation. That's just like a sugar rush. It fades. I used discipline, routine, obsession. I created a system that didn't give me a choice. Wake up, do the work, suffer, grow, repeat. I started reading like my life depended on it. Because it fucking did. I couldn't keep faking it. I had to actually learn. So I rewired my broken ass brain, letter by letter, word by word. I read until my eyes hurt. I studied until shit made sense. I read everything twice, sometimes 3 times. Because that's what it took. I wasn't going to cheat my way through life anymore. I was going to outwork every motherfucker who ever doubted me. The stutter didn't magically disappear, but I fought it. I forced myself to speak, to read aloud, to face the thing that had humiliated me for years. I put myself in the fire over and over until the fear burned away, until I could talk without shaking, until I could look someone in the eye and say my name without twitching. But I didn't stop there. That wasn't enough. I didn't want to just catch up. I wanted to dominate. I wanted to become something nobody saw coming. I wanted to be the nightmare in every doubter's head. I wanted to be the proof that every excuse was bullshit. That could be buried under sweat, pain, and obsession. So I built the callous mind. That's what I call it. The ability to suffer on purpose, to choose hard, and to lean into discomfort, not away from it. Because life doesn't get easier. You just get harder. Pain is the ticket. Misery is the price. And once you pay that shit enough times, you become unbreakable. People ask me how I did it. How I went from a bedwetting, beaten down, broken ass kid in Indiana to Navy SEAL, ultra endurance freak, pull up world record holder. And I tell them the truth. They don't want to hear it. There's no secret, just suffering. Not once, not for a season, but every day on purpose until your body and mind become something else entirely. You don't chase greatness. You forge it in with reps, with scars, and with blood on the damn floor. I didn't change because I got lucky. I changed because I fucking suffered. I stared my demons in the eye and dared them to swing first. And when they did, I swung back harder. I didn't run from my past. I weaponized it. My trauma became my training ground. My misery became my mission. You were born with cards in your hand. Some good, some bad, some straight up cursed. I got dealt shit cards, but I learned how to play the hell out of them. That's the challenge I'm throwing at you now. What's your bad hand? What's your excuse? Were you abused, bullied, broke, sick, fat, weak, scared? You're good. Now write that shit down. Own it. Stare it in the face. Then flip it. It turn into the reason you never stop grinding. The reason you wake up early. The reason you read more, run more, lift more, suffer more than everyone around you. Because you can flip the script. No one's coming to save you. No teacher, no coach, no parent, no boss. It's on you. And if you wait for easy, you'll be waiting until you're dead. Don't wait. Get ugly. Get real. Get hard. And don't ever fucking stop. Stay hard.